Regarding Joyce Meyer, there is no public information indicating that she has struggled with alcoholism. She has, however, spoken extensively about overcoming various personal challenges and addictions through faith and practical steps. Per attention to listen this vidoe.
Drive down the highway, smoking my cigarette, saying, I can't stand to smoke, don't like to smoke, don't want to smoke, I quit smoking. And the thing that's very beautiful about this is I didn't know what I'm teaching you now. It was something I felt like God led me to do. And within 2 weeks I had quit, and I had tried for years prior to that.
Both Irene Rollins and Max Lucado highlight the significance of confronting personal issues, seeking support, and relying on faith to overcome addiction. Their stories serve as powerful testimonies to the possibility of recovery and redemption. Recently, Gateway Church faced a major crisis when founding pastor Robert Morris resigned after allegations surfaced that he had molested a 12-year-old girl in the 1980s. This shocking revelation not only shook the church, but also left a leadership vacuum. Even Robert's son, James Morris, who was expected to succeed him, decided to step down. In the midst of this turmoil,
I want to share a story with you about a dramatic experience I had over 20 years ago. It all began when I was dubbed America's pastor, and it took an interesting twist from there. I have had my own occasions in which I have wrestled with God. Seems we all could account for a divine wrestling match. One of the most dramatic occurred some 20 years ago. I was about 50 years old. To the casual observer, I was on top of the world. Our brand new church sanctuary was bursting at the seams. We added new members every week. The congregation had very little debt and absolutely no doubt that their pastor was doing great work. Our church actually appeared on the list of popular San Antonio attractions. Tour companies bus tourists to our services. The magazine Christianity Today sent a reporter to write a profile on me. The writer called me America's pastor. Reader's Digest designated me as the best preacher in America. All cylinders were firing. I turned sermons into books. My publisher turned books into arena events. I wrote kids' stories and recorded kids' videos. It was wild. What no one knew was this: I was a mess. Our staff was struggling. Departments were squaring off against one another. Tacky emails were flying like missives. Ministers were competing for budget dollars. A couple of invaluable employees, weary from the tension, quietly resigned. And since I was the senior pastor, it fell to me to set things in order. Yet, who had time for intramural squabbles? I had lessons to prepare. The problem with Sundays is that they happen each week. In addition, I led a midweek prayer service and taught a weekly early morning men's gathering. Deadlines were coming at me from all sides. I needed time to think, to pray, to study. What's more, consequently, I was unhealthy. My heart had the rhythm of a Morse code message, irregular and inconsistent. The cardiologist diagnosed me with atrial fibrillation, put me on medicine, and told me to slow down. But how could I? The staff needed me. The pulpit required me. The publisher was counting on me. The entire world was looking to me. So I did what came naturally. I began to drink. Not publicly. I was the guy you see at the convenience store who buys the big can of beer, hides it in a sack, and presses it against his thigh so no one will see as he hurries out the door. My store of choice was on the other side of the city lest I be seen. I'd sit in the car, pull the can out of the sack, and guzzle the liquid until it took the edge off the sharp demands of the day. That's how America's pastor was coping with his world gone crazy. Life comes with inflection points, junctures in which we know our world is about to change. Events that time-stamp life. Crossroads that demand a decision. Go this way. Or that. Everyone has them. You do. I do. Jacob did. Jacob's came with a name, Jabbok. It is the location where Jacob wrestled with an angel and walked away with a lame hip. My Jabbok, as it turned out, was a parking lot. The wrestling match lasted for the better part of an hour on a spring afternoon. I told God I had everything under control. The staff issues were manageable. The deadlines were manageable. The stress was manageable. The drinking was manageable. But then came a moment of truth. God didn't touch my hip, but he spoke to my heart. Really, Max? If you have everything together, if you have a lock on this issue, then why are you hiding in a parking lot, sipping a beer that you've concealed in a brown paper bag? Jabbok. That moment in which God brings you face to face with yourself, and what you see you don't like. Jabbok. When you use all your strength only to find your strength won't give you what you need. Jabok. A single touch on the hip that brings you to your knees. Jabok. Jab. Buck. Yet even in the moment, or especially in that moment, God dispenses grace. Look what happened next to Jacob. What is your name? The man asked. He replied to Jacob. Gen 32:27 NLT. On the page of your Bible, there is scarcely a space between the question and the reply. In real time, however, I sense a pause, a long, painful pause. What is your name? There was only one answer, and Jacob choked to spit it out. My name is Jacob. This was a confession. Jacob was admitting to God that he was indeed a Jacob, a heel, a cheater, a hustler, a smart operator, a fraud. That's who I am. I'm a Jacob. Your name will no longer be Jacob, the man told him. From now on you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have won. V28. Of all the times to be given a new name, and of all the times to be given this name, Israel means God fights, or God strives. The name celebrated and celebrates God's power and loyalty. The old Jacob fought for himself. The old Jacob relied on his wits, trickery, and fast feet. Jacob himself took care of himself. The new Jacob had a new source of power, God. From this day forward, each introduction would be a reminder of God's presence. Hello, my name is God Fights. Each call to dinner a welcome instruction, God Fights. It's time to eat. His email address was godfights@israel.com. His business card reminded all who read it of the true power of Israel, God Fights. His old name reflected his old self. His new name reflected his new strength. God Fights. What grace! God extended it to me. Abundantly. I confessed my hypocrisy to our elders, and they did what good pastors do. They covered me with prayer and designed a plan to help me cope with demands. I admitted my struggle to the congregation, and in doing so activated a dozen or so conversations with members who battled the same temptation. We no longer see tour buses in our parking lot, and that's fine with me. I enjoy an occasional beer, but for flavor, not stress management. And if anyone mentions the America's pastor moniker, an image comes to mind. The image of a weary, lonely preacher in a convenience store parking lot. God met me there that day. He gave me a new name as well. Not Israel. That one was already taken. But forgiven. And I'm happy to wear it.
The church elders needed a trusted voice to step in as a teaching pastor. One of the names they considered was Max Lucado. Max Lucado is a household name in the Christian community. He's a best-selling author, a gifted speaker, and a pastor who has inspired millions with his messages of hope and grace. But what many people don't know is that Max Lucado's journey hasn't been without its struggles. At one point in his ministry, he battled a secret addiction to alcohol. Can you imagine? A pastor, a man of God, called to preach the gospel, struggling with something as destructive as alcoholism. Recently, we've seen other Christian leaders like Rick Joyner, Chris Reed, and Lance Wallnau face allegations of alcohol abuse. These stories are heartbreaking, but they also serve as a wake-up call for the church. We need to create spaces where people can be honest about their struggles without fear of judgment or rejection.
Until I was 38 years old and ended up in rehab as a pastor, as a wife, as a mom. Yes, in rehab, right? Did I realize that alcohol addiction had taken over my life because of those?
These stories are a reminder that no one is immune to temptation or struggle, no matter how anointed or respected they may be. Today, we're diving into this powerful and deeply personal story of redemption, resilience, and faith. In a published op-ed for Fox News, adapted from the book God Never Gives Up on You, What Jacob's Story Teaches Us About Grace, Mercy, and God's Relentless Love, Max Lucado opened up about this dark chapter in his life. He shared how, during a particularly stressful season of ministry, he turned to alcohol as a coping mechanism. What started as an occasional drink soon spiraled into a dependency that threatened to derail his ministry, his family, and his faith. Listen to this excerpt from his book detailing his struggle with alcohol and how God healed and restored him. Irene Rollins began drinking at the age of 10 and continued to misuse alcohol throughout her teenage years. As an adult, while leading a church and managing family responsibilities, she reintroduced alcohol into her life as a coping mechanism for unaddressed emotional pain and stress. This dependency escalated, leading to functional alcoholism that she kept hidden due to shame and fear of judgment. In 2017, recognizing the destructive impact on her life and ministry, Irene sought help through rehabilitation. Emphasizing the importance of addressing underlying trauma and shame, she has since maintained sobriety and now dedicates herself to helping others overcome similar struggles. She authored Reframe Your Shame, Experience Freedom from What Holds You Back, detailing her journey and offering practical insights for recovery. Max Lucado has candidly recounted his struggle with alcohol, which resurfaced during a period of intense ministry pressures. Despite his successful pastoral and writing career, he began secretly consuming alcohol to manage stress. This clandestine behavior led to feelings of hypocrisy and guilt. A pivotal moment occurred when he sensed God confronting him about his actions, prompting Max to confess his struggles to his church elders. With their support, he developed healthier coping mechanisms and has since shared his experience to encourage transparency and reliance on faith in overcoming personal challenges. In his book, God Never Gives Up on You, he delves deeper into this journey, illustrating the transformative power of grace and community. This is the story of Pastor Max Lucado, a beloved author and preacher, and how he overcame alcoholism while still serving in ministry. If you've ever felt like your struggles
bad, because that's what shame does. It says, speaks to me and says, I am bad and I'm broken and that I am unfixable. So the very gospel that says I'm forgiven and freed, I didn't believe it for myself. Wow. And so to your point, to the question where you asked, when did I ever realize it? It was day 38 in rehab.
Day 38
Day
in rehab.
38.
disqualify you from God's grace or purpose, this testimony is for you. Can you relate to that feeling of being trapped? Maybe it's not alcohol for you. Maybe it's something else. But that sense of shame, that fear of being exposed, that feeling of being unworthy of God's love, Max Lucado felt it too. But here's the beautiful part of his story. God didn't abandon him. Max Lucado eventually reached a breaking point. He realized he couldn't fight this battle alone. He confessed his struggle to his wife, his church, and most importantly, to God.
Water bottles?
Yeah. So here's the deal. My husband was pressuring me to stop drinking so much. I was drinking to blackout on weekends, in the evenings, never out in public, just at home.
So you would go home.
He's waiting with open arms, ready to restore and redeem. Thanks for watching, everyone. If this video encouraged you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Until next time, remember, no matter what you're going through, God's grace is greater. See you soon.
Definitely, that's one of my biggest regrets that our family has had to heal from is just the fact that they felt unsafe around me because my husband would go away and I would drink to blackout and I'd pass out like on the bathroom floor per se. And they'd come in there and they're like, what's wrong with mom? And they're calling their dad, like, what do we do with her? And none of us understood alcoholism and that I couldn't stop on my own, that it had become a disease. So that our dysfunction was our normal. So they were, when I was going to rehab, they were like, Mommy, go, you need to go to rehab. They were like, what's rehab?